In Venezuela, citizens take to the streets across the nation to reject the U.S. foreign interference against the country. In Chilean presidential runoff elections on December 14th, left-wing candidate Janet Jara will face far-right candidate José Antonio Cast in a decisive election process for the future of the South American nation. Palestinian organizations are denouncing the international community's inaction in the face of humanitarian crisis in the Gaza Strip, resulted from Israel's recent genocidal escalation against the Palestinian people. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Sophie Fernandez from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Stay with us. In Venezuela, citizens take to the streets across the nation to reject the U.S. foreign interference against the country. Venezuelans mobilized to condemn the threats and claims of the White House to take over the nation's natural resources. Citizens also denounced the recent theft of an oil tanker and the kidnapping of its crew by U.S. military personnel. During the march, Venezuelans expressed their commitment to defend the homeland from any external interference. They also ratified their support for the Bolivarian government of President Nicolás Maduro, who has been at the forefront for defending the territory. And moving now to Honduras, the Liberty and Refundation Party, Libre, officially refuses to recognize the election results after an extraordinary assembly where they denounced fraud and foreign interference. Presidential candidate Jerick Moncada described the process as an ambush and claimed that voters had been coerced. The decision was backed by Libre's general coordinator Manuel Zelaya and the current president Xiomara Castro, who called for unity in the face of attacks from the far right. Finally, the party called on its members to take to the streets to demand a vote-by-vote and ballot-by-ballot recount. In addition, the Libre leadership called for unity and popular organization to confront electoral fraud and a justice system subject to imperial powers. In 1994, the commander of the Bolivarian Revolution, Hugo Chávez Frías, and the leader of the Cuban Revolution, Fidel Castro, formed a significant alliance, the result of a shared vision during a visit to Havana. The then Lieutenant Colonel Hugo Chávez presented Fidel Castro with his strategy to promote a revolution in Venezuela, based on forming broad social-political alliance for a strong election campaign in 1998. In turn, this campaign would seek power through traditional democratic means, with significant popular backing and the support of broad sectors of the armed forces. Chávez's brief visit to Cuba in December 1994 marked the beginning of a bilateral relationship that would end up transforming the geopolitics of Latin America. The first meeting became the Hope and Alliance of Our Peoples under America, a brotherhood that remains in force today. Meanwhile, the Venezuelan government expressed its concern over the arrest of former Bolivian President Luis Arce, warning that the judicial system is being used as a tool for political confrontation. In a statement, Venezuela said, "From a position of historical solidarity and respect between brotherly peoples, the government of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela expresses its support and active and timely solidarity with the brotherly Bolivian people. Venezuela warns about the selective use of judicial system as a tool for political confrontation, a practice that has been repeated in Latin America under lawfare schemes, and that seriously damages the credibility of Bolivian institutions, distorts democracy, and deepens social polarization." Moving now to Colombia, President Gustavo Petro will ask the United Nations to appoint a special rapporteur to investigate Washington's military operations in the Caribbean that violate human rights. The president denounced that this aggression violates human rights and regional sovereignty. He also demanded that Washington identify the victims of a recent attack on a boat carrying Colombian citizens. In this context, since September, The United States has launched a military offensive in the Caribbean with bombing in international waters, accompanied by warlike threats from President Trump. The Colombian president also described the United States operations as criminal and illegal act that affects regional sovereignty and undermines international law. The Trump administration has announced that the U.S. is resuscitating the notorious Monroe Doctrine. From Brazil, our correspondent Brian Mier shows us what that means for Latin America.
Fourth, the Donald Trump administration released its new national security strategy. Within the 29-page document lies a promise to bring back one of the most nefarious policies in the history of the United States, the Monroe Doctrine, causing alarm across Latin America.
Já está sendo considerado pelo governo brasileiro como
The Brazilian government considers this to be a serious threat. My sources tell me that behind the scenes, there is a unanimous rejection of this doctrine, and that this is being directly communicated to the United States government of Donald Trump.
Comunicado diretamente ao governo do presidente dos Estados Unidos, Donald Trump.
In 1824, President James Monroe created a new policy promising that the U.S. would intervene militarily to protect against any foreign incursion into Latin America. What initially seemed like a measure to help its neighbors defend themselves from European imperialism was twisted around to justify bloody military invasions and coups. Between 1898 and 1994 alone, the U.S. cited the Monroe Doctrine to justify 19 military invasions in the region.
Now, with the new Trump doctrine, Latin America has been converted back to the geopolitical center of the U.S. government's strategy to try to strengthen the North American empire. This will deeply affect bilateral relations between Brazil and the U.S., as well as relations between the U.S. and all of the countries in Latin America.
Although it was initially created to help defend countries against Europe, the Monroe Doctrine has been used to invade or support regime change operations in any government in Latin America that has tried to exercise sovereignty over its natural resources, including coups in 1964 in Brazil, 1973 in Chile, and a failed attempt in Venezuela in 2002.
It's very concerning from the perspective of the defense of sovereignty and the most basic rules of international relations and international law, and it's also very concerning because it has been announced by this government of Donald Trump, which is radicalizing its imperialism.
With the U.S. currently waging hybrid war against Venezuela, resuscitating the Monroe Doctrine adds a new justification to its illegal regime change playbook. Brian Mier, teleSUR, Recife.
And now we have a short break coming up. But first, remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and more. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Identificamos cada pieza de nuestra geografía en el radar con una lectura geopolítica. Y es que hay procesos que impactan en medio de la construcción de un mundo pluripolar. La nueva era de las relaciones económicas, sociales y culturales está marcando esta nueva hoja de ruta. A través del análisis vamos a encontrar el vector clave de cada proceso. El mapa de lunes a viernes solo por teleSUR.
Welcome back to From the South. In Chile's pivotal December 14th runoff, Janet Jara and Jose Antonio Cast will clash in a high-stakes fight over equity versus austerity. Mandatory voting mobilizes 15.8 million voters amid fears of inequality. The Chile runoff on December 14, 2025, pits progressive candidate Janet Jara against a far-right candidate Jose Antonio Cast. This election will define the future of the nation. This is a mere politics. It's a clash between equity and austerity, with the mandatory voting throughout sources amplifying the voices of those who experienced social unrest in 2019. Once again, the process is defined as a conflict between two absolutely antagonistic national projects. Now let's take a look at the presidential candidate for the governing Unity for Chile coalition, Janet Jara. Flag beggar for the eight left-wing Social Democratic and Progressive parties, as well as the Christian Democrats. Jara was born in 1974 in Santiago de Chile. She was Undersecretary of Social Security during Michelle Bachelet's second term, overseeing key reforms in pensions and Social Security. In March 2022, with the arrival of President Gabriel Boric to power, she was appointed Minister of Labor and Social Security. Among her most notable contributions is the implementation of the 40-hour workweek law approved in 2023. Her political career has been strongly linked to the defense of social and labor rights. Let's also take a look at Jose Antonio Cast's race, candidate for the Republican Party. Cast is a 59-year-old lawyer, representative of the conservative right who has been presidential candidate in the 2017, 2021, and 2025 elections. He has been a representative for District 24, Metropolitan Region, from 2014 to 2018, and a representative for District 30, Metropolitan Region, for 3 consecutive terms. Among his political proposals are greater support for the police, a prison reform that seeks to restore state control in prisons, a commitment to the North to restore order and protect the borders. Moving now to the United States, a shooting at Brown University leaves at least 2 dead and 9 injured as police search for those responsible. The institution issued an active shooter alert and ordered students to take shelter in place, responding to initial information indicated that a suspect was in custody. Agents from the FBI and other federal agencies joined the operation in the area of the engineering school, where students were taking final exams. The state governor also asked the public to stay away from the area while the investigation continues. In the United States, record floodwaters slowly receded in Washington state on Saturday, enabling residents to assess the damage and begin the arduous cleanup process. In Burlington, Washington, a farming community located about an hour north of Seattle, residents began emptying their homes of damaged furniture. Some properties were still surrounded by water. Although Saturday was dry, more heavy rain was expected Sunday. Authorities warned that the water level would remain high for days and there was still a risk of levee failure or mudslides. According to an analysis of weather data, this storm's moisture levels may have broken December records by as much as 6.7%, based on records dating back to 1940s. Moving to Sri Lanka, landslides interrupted the electricity supply and affected the infrastructure of the Badula area. Rock and mudslides came down from the highlands as residents tried to recover what was left of their belongings. Civil Security Department teams were immediately deployed to assist with rescue efforts, evacuation, and debris cleanup, while electricians worked intensively to restore damaged power lines. Authorities are still assessing the total extent of the damage. So far, no fatalities or missing people have been reported. In other news, French farmers continue to protest in various parts of the country, rejecting the culling of cows, which aims to curb the spread of diseases in cattle. The Farmers' Confederation blocked several roads in the capital city in an effort to promote extensive vaccination to protect livestock. Activists are calling for a different protocol for heavy cows. However, the government has detected several viral outbreaks in recent months, which has caused concern. The protest began this Thursday, following the authorities' decision to slaughter more than 200 cows on a farm after diagnosing contagious nodal dermatitis in one of the cattle. In this context, the Ministry of Agriculture promised to vaccinate at least 1 million cattle in the coming weeks as a preemptive measure against the threat of contagious diseases, following outbreaks of contagious dermatosis reported during the summer in Europe. The agency stated that euthanasia was the only effective way to save the cattle sector. However, it emphasized the importance of vaccination and support for affected farmers. We have a second short break coming up. Before, we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English. There, you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage, and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, but we'll be right back with more from the South. Don't go away.
We share your feelings, exalt your accomplishments, and show your reality. Our approach is global and keeps us in tune with the peoples. Caribbean countries also get our signal. With enthusiasm, we will continue to broadcast for them. Because we are teleSUR, the news broadcaster from South America and the Caribbean.
Explore the truth behind every story. With a deep and committed perspective, we decipher the details that shape our present and future, alongside the voices of the people that resonate in every corner of the world. teleSUR reports, a unique and authentic perspective that reveals the stories they try to hide and captures the essence of our continent, one story at a time, every Saturday. Only on teleSUR. Promoting self-care facilitates our quality of life, and it invites us to investigate the advances in science, research, analysis, and prevention of diseases that exist in the world today. Guide your body every Tuesday, only on teleSUR.
Welcome back. Palestinian organizations are denouncing the international community's inaction in the face of the Gaza Strip's humanitarian crisis, which resulted from Israel's recent genocidal escalation against the Palestinian people. The Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine blamed the international community for the Gaza humanitarian crisis, saying its failure to stop it amounts to complicity. The organization says the humanitarian crisis in Gaza is the result of the latest Israeli offensive and the blockade. Finally, the organization warned that tolerance of Israeli hostilities and the lack of firm response from the international community to the ongoing humanitarian disaster could lead to an even more serious crisis in the Palestinian territory. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres told the Security Council that Israel's settlements in the West Bank have reached an all-time high. The document shows that Israel has approved more than 1,000 tenders than even before, evidencing its illegal policy of stealing Palestinian land in violation of international norms. Guterres' report confirmed that in 2025 alone, the Tel Aviv regime approved around 47,390 homes for settlers, almost double the number approved in the previous year. These alarming figures contrast sharply with the annual average of approximately 12,800 units between 2017 and 2022, which already reflected the Israeli state's violation of the Palestinian rights to sovereignty and self-determination. New attacks by the Israeli occupation army shook the Gaza Strip on Saturday, despite the ceasefire, leaving several dead and wounded, including children. While health authorities in Gaza confirmed that the death toll since the start of Israel's latest genocidal campaign in October 2023 now exceeds 77,000 people, the humanitarian crisis caused by Israeli destruction is claiming lives as residents are unable to cope with winter conditions. Local sources confirmed that a vehicle traveling in western Gaza City was hit by a missile fired from an Israeli drone. The attack, which took place near the Nablus intersection, left 5 people dead and more than 25 wounded, prompting emergency and rescue teams to immediately mobilize to the impact zone. On Friday, the United Nations General Assembly adopted a resolution urging Israel to cooperate with the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees, UNRWA, with support from 139 member states. The vote took place at the UN headquarters in New York City, where 12 member states voted against, including Bolivia, Israel, and the United States, while 19 abstained. The resolution demands that Israel open unrestricted humanitarian access to the Gaza Strip, stop attacking UN facilities, and comply with international law. For his part, Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, Danny Danon, dismissed the decision, accusing UNRWA of supporting terrorism. Despite these accusations, UNRWA continues to serve millions of Palestinian refugees across the region, providing education, healthcare, and humanitarian support. In other news, 2 U.S. soldiers and a civilian interpreter were killed in an attack while on a joint patrol in Palmyra, Syria. 3 other U.S. soldiers and 2 Syrian security force agents were also injured in the attack. The spokesperson for the Ministry of Interior of the de facto Syrian government, Nur al-Din al-Baba, reported that the attack was perpetrated by a member of the terrorist group calling itself the Islamic State. The official also reported that the agents of the Syrian Internal Security Forces had previously warned of possible attacks by this terrorist group and regretted that the U.S. military did not take this warning seriously. In this regard, U.S. President Donald Trump promised a response against the terrorist faction for killing U.S. soldiers. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media. We're on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For Telesur English, I'm Sophie Fernandez. Thank you for watching.